Okay, welcome to the Anaheim, or let's start it again. Okay, welcome to the Hockey News Anaheim Ducks show. My name is Patrick Present. I am joined by Derek Lee. We are the writers, editors, reporters for the Hockey News for the Anaheim Ducks site. Derek, how are we?
I'm doing well, Patrick. How are you today?
Good, a little under the weather actually, but that's okay. There was big news. We picked a great time to record.
hmm
On Friday, just before the Ducks took on the Minnesota Wild. The Ducks traded for Rangers captain Jacob Trouba that cost him Euro Vakanainen and a 2025 fourth round pick. Derek, what were your thoughts on this one?
Well, it was really interesting because I think there was a lot of not necessarily smoke, but there is definitely a lot of things ramping up regarding Trouba. Earlier in the week, the Rangers general manager Chris Drury, I guess he kind of put out a memo that Chris Kreider and Trouba were two of the players that they're potentially looking at moving. And that was supposed to kind of be like that statement, shockwave to kind of get the Rangers going. And ultimately, it didn't really get them going. And at some point, it was kind of like, well, we need to move Trouba one way or another. And it seemed like he was maybe going to go on waivers. That didn't happen. And then a little bit after that is when the Ducks kind of made that move for Trouba. My initial thoughts on how he kind of fits, I think, um, obviously there's a lot of defensemen right now for the Ducks besides moving Vakanainen out. But I think, you get another right-handed shot on the blue line. I think that's something that Pat Verbeek had really wanted throughout the summer, and he wasn't able to get that. And then now he gets that with Jacob Trouba. What were your thoughts about this deal?
Well, it was funny because it ramped up right when we were at morning skate, and we had seen Pat Verbeek that morning, and he was a little different, I'll say. But when the reports started coming out about Trouba and the list of teams that were interested, I was like, oh, there's a legitimate market for this guy. So it didn't surprise me when the Ducks name popped up in that sort of list of teams interested. Um, but as far as a fit goes, him and Cronin for Beacon Cronin really prioritize that righty lefty on every pair, which, I don't personally, I don't care. Like I think it can be valuable to have a left shot defenseman on the right side. Think of Zellweger or Heiskanen or Dahlin or whoever, but they prioritize it, so it'll make their lives a little bit easier. But they want to get more physical. The front of the net is definitely an area of concern for the Ducks defense, and they're giving up the most expected goals per 60 in the NHL right now. So theoretically, Trouba helps with that. The cap hit, I don't, it's a non-issue for me just because they are so far beneath the cap ceiling. Um, and Jacob Trouba he was the captain of the New York Rangers. So like Pat Verbeek said, that's not an accident. Um, but we'll talk about it in a little bit, but it does create a little bit of an offensive or a defensive logjam. But the on ice question, his play may have declined, but looking through the numbers, he kind of took on a really big defensive role with the Rangers, and in the playoffs last year, where he was at his worst, according to a lot of people who follow that team, he was up against the Barkov line in the Florida series and stuff like that, and he's the number one penalty killing skater for the Rangers. So as I just like the fit makes sense stylistically, but just on the roster, not so much, I guess. We'll get into that right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, you have so many NHL caliber defensemen on that blue line. You have Cam Fowler, Radko Gudas. They added Brian Dumoulin this past summer, and then you also have the younger guys like Pavel Mintyukov, Olen Zellweger, Jackson Lacombe, and then Drew Helleson has come up when there was injuries, and he's kind of made a statement in showing that he deserves to be on the roster and that he probably shouldn't be sent back to San Diego. But with 8 guys on the blue line, you only have 6 spots. And it's very clear that guys like Gudis and Fowler and Dumoulin are not going to be in the press box. And now you add Trouba to that mix. That's 4 spots already now that you have out of 6. So that means you have 2 young guys sitting in the press box, and it's been Pavel Mintyukov over the past two games. Um, it's it'll be interesting to see who is out tonight because now Trouba comes in. That means you have to have two. Is it going to be Drew Hallison? Is it going to be Jackson Lacombe? When is Pavel Mintyukov going to get back in? Right, you kind of have to rotate these guys, and there's only so many spots that you can give to them. So I don't know if this. I would imagine this sets up for a potential trade with Cam Fowler down the line. We can talk a little bit about that too as well. But yeah, it's very from a logistic standpoint, it's very confusing.
Yes, especially because someone like Drew Hellison came in and has played so well, and Pavel Mintyukov is a 10th overall pick 2 years ago, and Lacombe has really come in and proven his dedication to his craft and really fine-tuned his game. The results have varied, but he's still young. And then Olin Zellweger he was a scratch on opening night and has really come in and I guess taken that personally and really seized the opportunity and has had a stranglehold on a lineup spot on a nightly basis. So yeah, the logjam is present, and you know Friedman reported this morning, December 9th, that the Ducks wanted Fowler in the Trouba trade. The Rangers obviously valued the cap space more, but this this can kind of all get sorted out, like you said, with a Fowler trade. But even then, you're still having a young kid in the press box, but I guess that's less of an issue than two of them. Um, so yeah, it's not ideal right now, and hopefully there's a swift conclusion. But yeah, the obvious solution is a Fowler trade.
Yeah, I think at some point too, Brian Dumoulin, he was a pending UFA. I think he's going to get dealt at some point. So then um, you have enough spots for guys to come back in, and then eventually a spot for Tristan Luneau, who's down in the AHL right now. But yeah, right now it's looking very difficult for guys to kind of be in the lineup just because you have so many veterans. And not that that's a bad thing, right? Having veterans is kind of something you need for stability if you want to get back into that playoff hunt. But at some point, you have to let the young guys play and develop because they're not going to be able to do that in San Diego because they are good enough to play in the NHL.
Correct. I think we're all in agreement there that something's got to give at some point.
Mm.
Moving on, there was also some big news in the middle of last week when the Four Nations face-off rosters were announced, and the Ducks' very own Leo Carlsson made Sweden's roster. He is the only Duck representative in that tournament, and the youngest by a lot, the youngest player in that tournament by quite a bit. I think it's like 2.5 years younger than the next youngest guy, which is Brock Faber. So a really heartfelt congratulations to Leo. And what were your reactions to the roster announcements and Leo making to Sweden?
Well, it was really tough for me to think about whether he would make it or not, especially because there had been a report earlier in the week that William Eklund had made the team. He ended up not making the team, and Leo made the team over him. So for me, it was just whether Eklund or Leo would make the team. I didn't think it would be possible for both, and it's clear that that was the case. So, but I'm really happy for him. This is a guy like you mentioned that's a lot younger than a lot of the other selections in the tournament. So even if he doesn't necessarily get into the lineup on a game to game basis, if he's just there to kind of soak up everything and kind of learn from the veteran guys like Victor Hedman and Eric Carlsson, and there's a lot of really good centers on that team as well. Like you have Joel Eriksson Ek, Mika Zibanejad. Like those are guys that he can learn from. I think the way that he'll be utilized, maybe not necessarily as a center, but maybe more as a winger because he's really struggled in the face-off circle. I know when he played at the Worlds for Sweden's head coach Sam Hallam, he was a center, but they kind of moved guys up to the lineup to kind of help out with faceoffs, kind of something that Greg Cronin has done this season as well. So I think, like, even if he doesn't get to play, it's still a beneficial experience, right? You want him to kind of get prepared and be ready to take on that role maybe as soon as next year, too, with the 2026 Olympics coming up.
That's the point that I was hoping you'd bring up was the Olympics because everyone just sees this as a stepping stone to that bigger, more impactful, meaningful tournament. And we all like Leo played in the World Championship right before his draft. And so he has his roots with Sweden internationally. And uh, you know, he just does everything right on the ice. You know, there's a few rookie mistakes that he's made this year, and that's to be expected. Not a rookie technically, but he still played less than 82 career games. Um, but he's still learning the ropes. But the impact that he has when you see him like just build up a head of steam through the neutral zone, it's super impressive and so impactful, just driving the defenseman back and opening up so much lane or so many lanes for his line mates and just the way he defends, forechecks, all of it. He's just one of the more detail-oriented defensemen, or sorry, detail-oriented centers that that I've seen at such a young age, and it's impressive to see. And I could see why Sweden would value that because you can plug and play that anywhere in the lineup, and if there's an injury, if he's just a 13th forward, what have you, he's going to learn a lot from being around those guys, and that's I mean that's a lot of Stanley Cups in that room too, right? So it's going to be really exciting, and it's nice to have someone to root for in that tournament as well.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when you see a team like the Washington Capitals, they're near the top of the standings and they don't have a single guy on any of those four rosters. So for the Ducks to be kind of as low in the standings as they are and still have somebody representing their team in that tournament, that's really great to see.
Hmm. Move on.
Yep.
All right. So unfortunately, the Ducks lost Trevor Zegras in their game against the Vegas Golden Knights last week. Was it last week? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, just a weird, awkward play where the steal gets caught up with William Karlsson's, and he kind of tries to recover on his opposite leg, and we still don't know the extent of the injury, but it's very clear his impact was felt in the next two games. Then they lost 4-1 and 5-1 respectively, especially with Carlsson out as well. But just that loss, it was so we just didn't know what happened. It was so weird. Like we thought his steel popped out or something, but he was definitely in some pain and had to get helped off the ice. And the ripple effect through the lineup has certainly been felt.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned, having Zegers and Carlson, that's two of your best playmakers on the team. Um, and like the team already kind of struggles to generate offense. And so you take both of those guys out, and you really need guys like Mason McTavish and Cutter Gauthier to an extent to kind of step up because those are two really high draft picks. They're two very offensive oriented guys that can create offense. And we just haven't really seen that at all. And um, the fact that there's multiple evaluations for Zegers, I think that doesn't really bode well for what the result is going to be for that. So I think that maybe fans and even the organization itself, I think they have to anticipate that he's going to be out again for a very long time, and that's already unfortunate because of how many games he missed last season due to numerous injuries. But yeah, I mean, I think it like obviously there's no bright side. Somebody gets hurt, but I think now is kind of the opportunity where you really want to see someone like Mason McTavish kind of step up and be that true like top two center behind Leo Carlsson. And he's really struggled to get going this season for whatever reason. He had an injury that kind of popped up against Minnesota the last time that they played him, not this previous time, but back in November. And he just it's been really a struggle for him to get going for whatever reason.
Yeah, for McTavish, yeah, he hasn't really made the most of this opportunity either, and I don't know what uh I don't know what his rub is. Like he looked a little bit more explosive when he returned from injury than he had previously, so that leads us to believe that it was more of a lingering issue for him. But um, it's hard to kind of he shouldn't be so dependent on playing with the right players. Like he should be able to impact the game no matter who he's playing with, kind of like Troy Terry. Um, just because he does take penalties, but he's decent defensively. Like he doesn't typically drift too far from his assignment, and he's a really good forechecker, and he's pretty good in transition as well. But I don't know, for whatever reason, his decision making is just taking like one or two beats longer than it should. So a lane will close, shooting or passing, skating lane even. So, you know, you would have hoped that missing so much time would have kind of ironed that out a little bit. And maybe it's just a factor of getting back up to speed. And, he's a week or so back on the ice. So we'll see what happens here. He's going to obviously be in an elevated role with Zegras out. And, we, just getting back to Zegras for a little bit, Cronin said he was playing the best hockey of his time this season. And I agree. He was impacting the game defensively. He was like the numbers were finally coming. He had like 6 points in 6 games leading up to that. And it's just really unfortunate to see that because from the second he came into the league, everyone was saying, "Oh, this guy, he does all these great things." Great from a lot of people, but he does all these great things, but he can't defend. Well, now he's defending, oh, but he can't produce. Well, now he's doing both, and then he gets hurt, and it's like, oh, well, now it just leaves him in a bad spot. But we're wishing for a speedy recovery and for his absence to lead to a lot of these younger players, like we had mentioned, McTavish and Gauthier, to seize these opportunities and really impact the game in their own way. Because again, Cutter Gauthier, he's not to change subjects again, but Cutter, I think um, going into going into the year, that benching early in the season really affected him, and then he developed these fourth line habits. He's done everything the coaching staff and that management has asked from him, and he's forechecking really well, defending really well. He's making little plays off boards and stuff. His next step, I think, would be to start carrying the mail up ice, being that puck transporter, and really letting his creative juices kind of flow. What say you?
Yeah, I think in spite of right developing those habits, I think it's kind of dampened down like his offensive abilities. But I think part of that also has to kind of do with the role he's been playing. He's been playing a lot with Isaac Lindstrom and Brett Leeson, and they've kind of been used as like a pseudo mat, like kind of a checking line, I guess, in a way. And because of that, they haven't really had the ability to kind of generate chances because most of the time is spent in the defensive zone. So by the time they're kind of out of that, they have to change because they've been in there for so long. So I liked that he got the opportunity with McTavish and Clorin, even though they didn't really kind of do a lot with that. But I mean, they were playing against like the best defensive team statistically in the Wild, so I can understand why chances like that are so hard to come by. But yeah, I think especially with Zegras out because Zegras was playing on the wing, I think you'd like to see Gauthier kind of get that elevation and kind of get put in a better spot because eventually you want him to be in your top six. And right now he's not really in that role.
Yeah, and hopefully Carlson's return also kind of sorts that out as well.
Yeah. And then
Uh,
going back to Zegers just for a quick second, I mean, he's just like, he's such a polarizing player to so many people. And yeah, like you already mentioned, it's like, oh, well, he can do these things, but he can't do this. And then he figures out how to do this. And then it's like, oh, well, now he can't do the things he was good at. Well, I mean, like, what do you want? Like,
yeah.
it's like anything he does, like nobody is happy with, right? And then he scores a goal and he celebrates, and it's like, oh, well, maybe he needs to act like he's been there. And then he doesn't do that, and it's like, well, he's not happy here. And then even you have Zach Kavanaugh from the Sporting Tribune, right? He talked to Seegers the other day before he got hurt, and he says, "Oh, well, are you happy here?" And he says, "Yeah, I'm living the dream." And then people are like, "Well, that just means he's pretending to be happy." It's like, no, like maybe like we don't know, right? We don't know if he is happy, if he's not, just based off of the way he is in practice every day, right? If you see him every day, you see him at the games, he looks like he's having a great time. If he's not having a great time, he's doing a really good job of pretending that he is, right? So I'm it like it really sucks that he's out because he's impacted the game really well this season from all aspects. Like there's been multiple occasions like every game where he has like a really good back check. And like that kind of doesn't really get noticed a lot, right? When you're an offensive minded guy, people just think, oh well, he's not putting up points. Like he must be bad now, or he's not scoring anymore, then he's not doing anything right. Well, he is. He's doing things that the coaching staff and management have asked him to do, and it's helped him become more of a complete player. And the way that you kind of like it's like with Leo, right? If you can kind of drive play by being solid enough defensively, you can get your chances offensively because it comes in transition. And I like just having that out of your lineup now. I think that's really unfortunate.
Yeah, we can all agree with that. And yeah, the narrative around him is very frustrating, and now obviously it just won't go away, and it still won't. But moving on, I wanted to quickly touch on the goaltending in Anaheim because the Ducks right now are 2 games under 500. I think they're right where they 10, 12, and 3. Um, and a lot of that is due to their stellar goaltending. Um, Lucas Dostal is still among the top 5 in every statistical category. John Gibson is right there with him. They have really provided Lucas is young, but really veteran presence. Even not even just the saves that they make, but the way they manage the game. I've noticed a lot recently, and that if the team has if it's a long shift, they'll go out of their way to freeze the puck. If they see the other team changing, they'll try to move it up quickly. Rebounds to the corner, rebounds to the net, even like it's the way that they are controlling the game from inside the crease has been really impressive. And John Gibson looked a little bit leaky in the last game, which is very uncharacteristic for him. But I if Czechia had a team at the Four Nations, Lucas Dostal would start every game, and it looks like he's going to be the front runner for the Olympics as well. But the early returns on the goaltending has been great, and that is definitely not a point of concern for the Ducks. And it's been a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, I think like yeah, you brought it up. Gibson looked a little iffy in the last game, but I think before that, like, both of them had been pretty spectacular all season. I know Gibson's only played like 6 or 7 games, but the games that he's been in, he's looked really solid and he's gotten multiple starts back to back. So I think that kind of tells you how much the coaching staff trusts him, even when he's been off for a little bit. I think Dostal, after a superb start, I think he's come back down to earth a little bit. He's still making the saves that he needs to, I think, but he's not making like the spectacular saves like where he has to bail out the team every single time. But yeah, just the Ducks have had such spectacular goaltending for so long, and I think if you can get the rest of the team going, like you have a pretty solid back end right there.
Yeah, it's nice to like when you watch other games or you listen to other reports on other teams, and it's like, oh well, this goalie had a bad game, but that our team was right there. It's like the opposite for the Ducks is like that's never just a concern. They always do the goaltending always does enough to win the game or keep you or within striking distance. And at a certain point it's just up to the offense to kind of bail you out at a certain point. But right now it's a good tandem, and I don't see a trade happening on the horizon unless a stellar package comes out of the clouds, like a Godfather offer, one that they can't refuse. So, it's nice to have a good situation in Anaheim. It's nice to not have to run Lukas Dostal into the wall because, again, like you said, his play has kind of come back down to earth. Not even down to earth. It's come from like the
The
stratosphere down to
heavens.
like the clouds, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, uh, that's it's just everyone can breathe a little easier when they know that the goalies behind you are going to make the saves that they need to make to keep you in a certain game. All right, moving on. We just got news this morning that Beckett Seneca was invited now to Canada's World Junior Selection Camp for the upcoming World Junior Championships that's going to take place starting the day after Christmas. He obviously went on an absolute tear after getting snubbed from the camp roster. I noted the first time since 1997 that a third overall pick who wasn't playing in the NHL didn't make a World Junior roster. So he took that personally, obviously, and is now invited to camp. Um, and then we'll talk about Carey Terrance and Bernovic also. But initial thoughts on Seneca's snub and then unsnub.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people were surprised that he didn't make the team for whatever reason. Hockey Canada has their reasons, I guess, but it's great to see that they kind of realized, oh, well, maybe he should be on the roster. Um, and yeah, like you said, he just had a really great week capped off by a highlight reel goal against the London Knights the other night. So I'm sure he's happy about that, and I'm sure he's trying to prove as much as he can that he deserves to be on that roster. Um, yeah, I mean, that's all I had. Like, it's just based off of like the makeup of the roster. You can kind of understand why he was left off. But at the same time, this is a top draft pick. This is somebody who's really offensively gifted, and you need those kinds of guys to win a tournament like this.
I mean, yeah, you look at the gold medals that have been won. When even looking at the ones that or current Ducks now were impactful in the Trevor Zegras one in the bubble, like he took over that tournament offensively. Mason McTavish took over his tournament offensively. Uh, so just like he has that ability to just be the instant offense. Like we saw it. I'm gonna um, I'm just going to win this game for my team right now. And yeah, that goal against like the, he made Sam Dickinson 11th overall pick. Like he's going to make Canada's roster. He just turned him inside out with one of the most ridiculous moves I've seen, and then goes bar south, shelf south. Like it was just I watched it about 50 times probably in a row. But yeah, that's just the kind of thing he can do, and that kind of stuff has the potential to just change the tide of an individual game. Even like if your team scores a big goal like that, if you're down a goal to take a lead, whatever. So yeah, and then like you said, the Canada roster, you can see why he might have been left off. They like to have that fourth line energy type line at the bottom of their roster that can kill penalties, and then it gets kind of crowded because he's not a center. And then along the wings, Gavin McKenna and Porter Martone have had such great years, and you're not going to leave off Cowan or, you know, Richie or any of these guys. So it's a tough call. And, but if he earns a spot, it just proves how competitive he is. And then that'll hopefully translate to the NHL when he makes it.
Agreed.
And then to wrap up, unless you have anything else, I want to kind of give a quarter, third of the season review. Like where do you see the Ducks right now? Do you think they can hang around the 500 picture, maybe even, go on a streak here, or is it kind of going to be a little roller coaster here as we um ensure or we kind of fit Jacob Trouba into the mix and hopefully get all these guys healthy again?
Yeah, I think maybe a lot of it has to depend on when Carlsson and Zegras are going to get back, if Zegras is back at all. I think this is a really important, like, kind of turning point in the season because around this point last year is when things kind of started to fall apart, and a lot of that was due to injury. So, I think what you want to see is, despite the injuries, you want to see kind of certain guys take on more responsibility, and the mindset just kind of be, well, these guys are out, but we can still put it together because we have talented guys on this roster. We have guys that are capable of taking on more responsibility. So, um, I mean, I think depending on when Leo's supposed to get back, I would assume he'll be back at some point during this road trip, if not tonight against Montreal. But where they are at right now, I think it's a little bit better than last season, maybe not record wise or whatever, but I think you're starting to kind of see the connectivity come together a little bit more. I know the last two games have not been very great, but I think, just talking to the players, talking to the coach, you see that there's a little bit more of maybe not chemistry, but guys know what they're trying to do. A lot of guys have talked about how they have an identity now, and now it's just kind of about making sure that they stick to that and that they are able to kind of do that on a consistent basis, right? Because a lot of the time it's been just that the team is so inconsistent, whether it's on offense or defense, and so if you can put that together, despite these like certain guys being out, I think then you're starting to head in the right step and reach that next part of the rebuild.
Yeah, you said it. Like the where they are now versus last year, like there's such a more streamlined message. Everyone understands their assignments on a daily basis. They understand what they need from each other, coaching staff, you know, so on and so forth. I thought Ryan Strome had a really interesting kind of view when asked about the acquisition of Trouba after the Ducks' last loss against the Wild, when he was like, you know, the last couple deadlines, it's been more, but since he's been here, the last couple deadlines have been just sell, sell, sell. And it's nice that at this point in the season, maybe when they are on a bit of a skid right now and they're losing guys, to bring in a guy for a change like Jacob Trouba, like it's not nothing what happens in the room. We just don't know what happens, so it's hard to report on it or it's hard to um quantify the impact of something like that. But Jacob Trouba is a big name. He has a lot of clout throughout the NHL, and it's kind of like a reward isn't the right word, but it's a reassurance that you're doing the right thing and that the staff, the management, everyone kind of believes in the direction that you're going. Pat Verbeek said before the last loss that he's happy with the kind of progression since last year that the team is making in that aspect. And you know, the offense is an issue. The way that they are generating it or not generating it, but that starts in the defensive end. I feel the hope is that by adding someone like Trouba to solidify the structure of the defense, that it makes life a little bit easier on the other end, and it really kind of clogs up the neutral zone. You can try to turn some of that congestion into offense, like we've seen happen so often against the Ducks, where a mistake happens in the neutral zone and then a quick up and then 2-on-1 the other way or whatever. So all in all, they're at a much better point, but they do have to kind of battle this injury bug and kind of persevere through it, which is going to happen with any team. I mean, the Wild are going through it with their injuries, so it's like, this is an opportunity more than a hindrance, hopefully, as the way that they view it. And uh, this is a very important road trip, obviously. So we'll see how they come out the other end of it. But even if the record isn't going to be great, it's just going to be interesting to see, where they land.
Yeah, I mean, I know like people like they really care about the wins, but at the end of the day, it is more about kind of seeing the progression, right? And they've had a lot of games where they've played well and they've lost. So I think at the end of the day, it's not about the wins and the losses. Like you would rather see them play better, and then more often than not, like when you play well, you are going to get the wins, right? So I think it's a real like people probably won't want to hear this, but like winning ugly versus losing and playing well, maybe that's not always the best outcome because you would like to see them play well and win because you can't keep winning ugly. Like that's just not sustainable in the league with how good other teams are. But just going back to Truba really quickly, but like he has like on the ice, people have their qualms, but I think off the ice he has a really great pedigree. Like we've already talked about before, he's the captain, the New York Rangers. He's just like from all accounts, he's just a really great guy to be with. He knows a couple of guys in the room already, like Vetrano and Strome. And having another veteran presence that'll go over well. Um, and I can't remember like what interview is from, but there was a point um, where you talk about like competing for a playoff spot, and when you bring someone in to kind of help feed that and help you kind of push towards that goal, that makes people in the room feel good because, like you already said, like yeah, we are doing something well, and we kind of have the trust of the general manager now that we're adding guys, and that's going to help us become a better team.
Yeah, like I said, it's not nothing. So I think if I were to boil it down, I'd say the Ducks record right now is about where it should be. Just under 500, the lower third of the league, but they're not, you know, their points percentage isn't, a third. Like, you know what I'm saying? They're competitive in games, and some could go one way, some could go the other way, but hopefully there's a spark here, and hopefully the progression continues upward instead of tracking back down. So yeah, I'd say the record is where it should be, and that's not a bad thing. But they are definitely more competitive in games, last two games notwithstanding. But circumstances are what they are. So unless you have anything else, I think we can wrap up.
Yeah, I mean, like they haven't. The thing is, too, they haven't had a lot of stinkers. Like Cronin said
Yeah.
that after one of their post games recently. I think they're now it's like six, like 4, 5, and 1 or whatever it is the last 10 games, but they definitely have been competitive in almost every single game, which wasn't exactly the case last season.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll do it for Derek Lee and Patrick Present. Thank you for watching, listening to the Hockey News Anaheim Ducks show. Uh, Keep reading, keep listening, and we'll see you next time. All right.